Well, officially, thank you and welcome to joining us today for the Wells Fargo and Jackie Robinson Foundation Beyond College webinar, Charting a Path to Graduate School Successfully webinar. Today, we'll have a group of professionals talking about how they got to graduate school, how they made the decision, what they chose. So a little bit about who we are. Jackie Robinson Foundation started in 1973 with the idea from Rachel Robinson, who decided that she wanted to start something that would continue giving to students over the years and to embrace the legacy of Jackie Robinson. We have done scholarship, leadership development programs for minority students across the country since 1973. And with the launch of JRF Impact, we now offer a virtual platform to engage with students, and we've also opened the Jackie Robinson Museum. So if you are in New York, 75 Varick, you can always find us there. It's an opportunity to kind of touch and feel and see in real time the kinds of things that have happened across our history. So if you'd like to visit, you can always scan the QR code, but a little bit about what we've done since 1973. More than $117 million in grants and programs, more than 1,900 JRF scholars and alumni, a 98% graduation rate, and more than 5,000 JRF impact students. So there's a lot that's happening, but there's going to be a lot of even more interesting things happening today during this presentation. So I'll talk a little bit about our moderator for today. Our person is Dewey Norwood. He's been at Wells Fargo for more than 25 years. He has embraced not only graduate school, but leveraging those opportunities in graduate school to different aspects of his career at Wells Fargo. And currently he's the Senior Lead Diversity and Inclusion Consultant. He is also the Enterprise HBCU Strategy. He is the person behind the HBCU credit card campaigns. He is the face. He is Dewey Norwood.
Listen, see, how do you live up to that? When you got an intro like that from the Dr. Caroline Harper, it makes it tough to live up to that. But hey, listen, I'm going to do my best. And what I'm going to say is, scholars, welcome. We have a great group assembled here today. And I think that our topic is one, candidly, that's top of mind for a lot of you all. Many of you all have been with us throughout the entire series. For those that have joined, thank you so much for being a part. But today is a real one. And we are going to have a very candid dialogue about the graduate school process, the things you need to be keeping in mind, and the insight that you'll need to hold on to as you're making a decision for what a graduate school pathway may look like for you. We've got the leaders here. They know the information. They're going to be very candid with what they share. And so we want you today to utilize both the Q&A feature and also the chat feature so we can keep an eye on any of the questions that may be coming in or things that may be top of mind here for you today. I'll repeat, this is a safe space. This is never a space where we're going to call your name out if you submit a question, but we want you to ask those tough questions so we can get you answers and keep you empowered for your graduate school process, whatever it may be. All right, as we continue on here, next slide will give us a little bit of information about Wells Fargo. So $1.9 trillion in assets, 1 in 3 households here in the US having a banking relationship in some way, shape, or form with our institution. 10% of the small businesses here in the US engaging with our firm in some way, shape, or form. Love that ranking there from Fortune, number 47 on Fortune's 2023 rankings of America's largest corporations. And some great feedback there also on the work that's happening from a community perspective around housing, around small business, financial health, and obviously environmental and low carbon economy components. So be sure to check out Wells Fargo Stories. There's a lot of great information there on that website about the things that the firm is doing. And I think information that you'll find very helpful for you in the days ahead. Hey, we got a spotlight on the next slide. Angel, thanks for this one. The work that's happening across the higher education space. So in the last 12 years, our firm has provided now over $119 million of financial support for higher education programming. That is an important number. In addition, if you disaggregate that data, the number is actually now going to be nearly $40 million of support specifically for HBCUs. These are strategic investments that our firm is making to support historically Black colleges and universities. As a part of my role, I'm responsible for those areas, so certainly want to be able to highlight these numbers. And a huge shout out to all of our partners, both in the foundation and across our external engagement team that helped to make this work happen. Hey, as we continue on, we always love to have a spotlight. This is a really exciting one for us. This is actually announcing a great program that is providing up to $10,000 of grant support for home buyers. And you'll see the different markets that are listed here for Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Philadelphia, PA, and Dallas, Fort Worth, of course, the Washington, D.C. market and surrounding areas, Baltimore, and also Atlanta, where I happen to be joining from today, and Charlotte, and also New York. So if you live in those markets or cities, hey, jump over that press release and learn more about what the opportunities are relative to the down payment assistance. But you may say, well, I'm not from those cities. But you know what? I bet you know someone that lives in one of these cities or markets. So please share this information with others that may be interested and may be wanting to go ahead and jump into the home ownership side of things. You can also use the second QR link that's on that page to actually go to the website, to actually go through the process and getting pre-qualified for a loan. So please utilize those QR codes and share the information with others that we think can benefit from it. Even a phone number on there, I think they can be helpful too. Angel, thank you so much. Let's jump over to that next slide. You know, we got to spend a moment talking about those amazing HBCU Legends debit cards. We're really excited about this card portfolio and what we're doing to make these available to our amazing HBCUs. And so, Angel, please feel free. Let's jump to that next slide and we'll show you some of the schools that came on in our earliest phase of the collection. And on the next slide, you'll actually see our newest Group 3 additions that just joined the fold with us. And on the last slide, you all are getting a sneak preview here as a part of our work with our HBCU games and classics that we're going to be doing throughout the fall. You actually will be able to customize your banking experience with the amazing brands that you see here. So you see the Orange Blossom Classic spotlighted here. You see the HBCU NY Classic, MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey, my old stomping ground. So you can come and join us in September for that programming. And obviously the Bayou Classic as well, which will be taking place over Thanksgiving weekend. And a big shout out also to our friends at FAMU with their brand mark. And so we are really, really excited about these cards. These 4 that you'll see on the page are coming very, very soon. But for our Orange Blossom Classic, for our HBCU NY, and for the Bayou Classic, those are going to be limited edition cards only. You're only going to be able to get them for a short amount of time. So for anyone that wants to get a checking account with us and wants to get this card, as soon as those are released, go ahead and consider that that is an option to and a great time to go out and connect in there. All right, we've got a polling question here that we'll use for the day. And then right after that, we're going to jump into our introductions for our distinguished panelists. So this was simply a continuum. Kind of where do you stand today relative to graduate school? Hey, you're in college and interested in attending, in college and interested in attending maybe in a few years, working and interested in attending grad school. Maybe we have a handful of folks that are in grad school today, or none of the above. So we'll give it another 15 seconds here to get those responses in. Ask you to quietly hum your favorite game show music in your head. I see y'all out there grooving. We love it. We love it. All right, Angel, let's do this. We're going to count them down in 3, 2, 1. All right, and let's take a look at the metrics that we have here on this one. Wow, okay. I'm seeing an interesting cross-section here. A lot of folks falling into category A. Fair number of folks there, smaller number in category B, good number there in category C for folks that are working and are interested. A handful of folks that are in graduate school today, so graduate school partners that are on, thank you. And then some folks that fall into the none of the above category right now. So some pretty interesting metrics there. Our panelists may even spotlight or share some of their thoughts around some of those metrics as we go through things here for today. All right. With that said, we are off and running, and I'm now going to bring on the real stars of the show with Brian and Comina, with Chanel, with Caroline, with Sylvia, with Melissa, and also with Judd, to give them an opportunity to do some brief introductions so you can learn a little bit more about them. We do have a standing rule with this, and it's a little bit of a game, and some of y'all have been on these webinars before. We love LinkedIn. All of our partners are connected on LinkedIn. We'd love for you to connect with us on LinkedIn. We also have a little game going to see who gets the most LinkedIn requests. Now, I never win those. It's normally the good-looking people that win those. So Apple, yeah, there you go. I see Apple pointing at himself on that. So maybe that's where we'll start. So get those LinkedIn connections going. and we're really excited about a great conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hand the reins over to Brian Apple for his introduction, and he'll continue to hand it to the panelists, and then we're going to get into this thing with both feet. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who joined the bank the same day that I did, way back in, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Apple.
You're stealing half of my introduction. Thanks, Dewey. My name is Brian Apple, live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as Dewey mentioned, I've been working at Wells Fargo for exactly as long as he has to the day, a little over 25 years now. Did my undergrad work at Bryant University in Rhode Island. And after about 10 years in the working environment, I went back and got my graduate degree at the University of Southern California. Now, the real USC, the University of South Carolina.
Apple, you know you're getting in trouble. You know you're getting in trouble with that, right?
Well, she's not on here, is she? This time. But over to Kamina. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Brian. Hi, everyone. I am Kamina Carter, and I am sitting in the beautiful city of Claremont, which is called the City of Trees and PhDs, where I serve as the Vice President of Student Affairs. And I am a very proud alum of Tuskegee University, where I'm not just proud, but very active. I am also an alum of Martin University, where I received my master's in counseling, and I am currently a PhD student. And I will pass it to Chanel.
Thank you so much. I'm Chanel Hale, newly minted PhD as of a month ago. But just to walk you back, I'm a graduate of Spelman College at HBCU. And then immediately after Spelman College, I attended my first master's program at Vanderbilt University. So I think I can speak hopefully to some of you who are interested in going to graduate school immediately after undergrad. I then worked for several years, 9 years in the public sector, and then went back and got my PhD from Brown University, where I am just now finishing. I'm still living in Rhode Island. I'll be working in the Boston area, so I'll still be here. So I hope I can answer questions related to all of that in the Q&A or beyond. But I really like the two questions that the Wells Fargo team came up with. What are the learning experiences you were seeking in your graduate experience, and then why I chose my institutions, because they both are very closely connected. I can speak first to Vanderbilt, my first master's experience after undergrad. I didn't know what I was looking for in a master's program or why it would be useful. I just knew that I didn't want to work yet. I had an undergrad in psychology, didn't want a job where I wasn't doing anything and wanted to do programs. And so I found through a faculty member who I networked with, she helped me find a program, and that ended up working out great. For Brown University, I was much more strategic, much more proactive, and I thought about what I wanted to learn, what I wanted to get out of a program, right? How I wanted to better myself and improve my learning, improve myself as a professional, how I thought that would enhance my career and bring value, because, you know, it's a long program. So I thought about all of those things coming into Brown, as well as what type of information I wanted to utilize to solve problems. I was very interested in social policy, so that was what I was seeking. And
well, Dr. H, listen, you listen, you see what you listen. This is what we're in store for today. And so just know we're gonna spend more time on all of your journeys in all of those areas. And so you see what we're in for already, right here for today. Lots of me interrupting you and saying, you know, but she knows me by now.
I was just gonna kick it to Dr. Harper. Caroline, it's your turn.
I know you were, and you gave us half your dissertation, which I was digging it. I was loving all of it.
It's what I do.
We see how they do it both at Spelman. Well, we're gonna unpack all of that later on. We're gonna unpack all of that. We love it. So let me let you formally hand it over.
Yes, Dr. Harper, you're up next.
Well, I'm going to give you the abstract version, not the entire dissertation, the short version, which is, I'm Caroline Harper. I am, like Chanel and Kamina, loud and proud graduate of an HBCU. I did my PhD at Howard University in political science, and before that, I did a master's in communications at University of Houston and an undergraduate degree in communication at Lamar University. And again, like everyone else, I curated my academic experience to take me where I wanted to go. So I will pass it on to Sylvia.
Well, good afternoon, scholars, and welcome. And I am Sylvia Jones. I'm with Wells Fargo. And, you know, the title, who knows what that means, but I'm actually on our student banking team. I've been with the bank for 11 years, and I live in the great state of Georgia. And a little bit about my academic history. So I am a undergraduate. I get that at Utah State University. Utah State. I have stayed very, very close with my alma mater. I actually serve on the University Foundation Board at Utah State, and I'm actually the chair-elect. So I will be chair of the Foundation Board next year. I got my MBA right out of college, and I got my MBA from Western State College in Colorado. So I will now kick it over to Miss Melissa.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Melissa Lee. I'm currently the Assistant Dean for Admissions at Villanova School of Law. I'm 3 weeks into this new role. I am also a proud undergraduate HBCU alum of the first HBCU, Cheyney University. And then I went on and I got my MBA from a small university in Philadelphia called Thomas Jefferson University. And I am currently also a student. Again, I'm pursuing a doctorate in higher education at the University of Pennsylvania. And I will pass it on to Jed.
Thanks, and welcome all the scholars, and appreciate the opportunity to tell a little bit about my journey. I'm Judd Murchie. I live in Minneapolis. I work in a part of the organization similar to Sylvia. The title doesn't tell you much. I do a lot in working with think tanks and academic institutions to really understand and drive research that really helps support our work in underserved communities. So economic community development, things like that. I got into that space as an undergrad. I studied philosophy and world religions at a small liberal arts college. Went and worked for 10 years in kind of the consulting space, and then felt, maybe I need to go back to school. Went back to school, did a master's in urban planning and public policy, focused on community and economic development at a large state school that was really predominantly commuter. And then from there, I went straight into a PhD program in public policy at Syracuse. And right out of Syracuse, I joined the bank. And so I've been here for about 6 years, and it's been quite a journey. Never thought any of those degrees would lead to this career, and it's actually been one of the most rewarding parts of my journey, is being at Wells Fargo.
All right, listen, so you've met the members of the band. They are credentialed. They've been there, they've done that. They own the t-shirt and the hat. So again, please raise your hand either physically or virtually if you have a PhD after your name. Where else can you go, friends and family, to have 3? Now, let me add on it. If you are pursuing a PhD, also raise your hand. All right. You're in the right spot, scholars. Trust me. You're in the right spot. If you're looking for answers, you are going to find them today. You're going to find them today. So we're going to jump into our prepared questions, and then we have some additional ones that we may spend some time talking about later. And if it's okay for our purposes, for our doctors that are on, we're going to go first names on some of these things, unless I decide to get real fancy and call you something else. But it will always be nice, whatever I say. I promise you on that side. So listen, for this first one, again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the graduate school piece, and each of our panelists spend a little bit of time kind of touching on this one for starters. But I also want the additions here about what type of a environment were you kind of looking for? And again, we got some of those pieces already. Kwamina, Chanel, if we can, I want to start with you all on this one, maybe for starters. Just tell us a little bit more, go a little deeper on some of those pieces that you all touched on so well to get us started. So, Kwamina, can we start with you on this one?
Sure. Much like Chanel, I completed my Bachelor's of Science in Psychology at Tuskegee. And so for me, moving into graduate school, and I did pursue my master's immediately after my bachelor's, for me, it was about mimicking a similar environment. I found that my Tuskegee experience was very nurturing. It created space for me to explore who I was and who my interests were without making too much of a commitment. I had an interest in psychology anyway, and the more I learned about it, I felt that it provided transferable skills that would allow me to pivot in and out or across different industries. So I wanted that as a foundation, but I was, I will say, blessed or privileged to have the experience in undergrad to truly be able to explore my interests before making a longer term commitment to a career. It happens to be that I enjoyed psychology, and I found that I was, pretty skilled at it. And so I did pursue a graduate degree. Initially, I started at a large institution, and I'll just say the name, IU, Indiana University. I started at a large institution, but quickly found myself back at a small, predominantly Black university for my master's in counseling. And then from there, I took about 20 plus years to raise a child and live life and gain experience. And that also afforded me the opportunity to further explore how I could use the skills, education, credentials to really put in play what I had learned about myself, my interests, my talents. And it's two parts. So I actually work at the institution where I am a student. I became staff first, and I believe in the mission of the institution. And over a few years, I just began as a student back in 2021 and arrived here in 2017. So after a few years, I wanted to sort of put my money where my mouth was and join the band, as Dewey would say, and enter my role as a student here at CGU, having really watched and really aligned with its transdisciplinary approach and how I saw my skills and areas of expertise, again, being able to transfer across different areas. So that foundation for me in terms of what I studied and why, that foundation for me was really guided by an area of study that could be applied to many different areas, while I continue to pursue more specifically or narrowly what I wanted to study.
A lot of important decisions there.
Mm-hmm. A lot of important decisions. Chanel, I know you've got, again, we share a same bachelor's degree, so I'd be curious. And you too also went to pursue your master's immediately after your bachelor's.
I did, yeah. And so thanks for kicking that over to me. I was talking about this a bit in the intro, but for my bachelor's degree, I really didn't know what to do next to create a valuable experience, a professional experience. After my undergrad, mostly with a psychology degree, a lot of what I was told was, unless you're going on to professional school or to a PhD, there weren't many jobs. So I just sort of asked around, and for me, sort of the network that I had at Spelman led me to a master's program. And what I was told was to look for a program that would teach me the skills I'd want and that would lead me to a pathway toward a career and the types of jobs I wanted. And so that's how I ended up in my program there the first time. And thankfully after that program, it was great. I ended up working in the field. I ended up working in community development at Department of Justice for 4 years, and then the U.S. Agency for International Development for about 6 years. So I had quite a long career. And by the end of that period, that 9 or 10 year period, I looked around and I said, there wasn't really anywhere else for me to go in the public sector without having to manage large teams, which I did not have the patience for, or to sort of go overseas because I was working in international affairs. And I looked around and I saw all of the people who had really cool jobs and they had PhDs in social sciences as well, and just started asking them, how was this degree useful to get you where you are? And I took all of those things and I looked for that in a program. So I knew I wasn't going to continue in psychology because I didn't want to do counseling. I chose sociology because it provided me with a methodology that was broad enough for me to explore all of the social problems I was interested in. So that is the shortest way I can shorten that story, but I'll kick it over to the next person.
No, listen, it's such a great story. Panelists, I want to give you all space here. If there's anything that you want to add on to what Kwamina and Chanel have so masterfully shared.
Sure. Let me just jump in real quick.
Please,
and so I took kind of absolutely. Thanks, Dewey. A different path in that. So right after I finished my undergrad, actually I got engaged in college as an undergraduate student. So right off the bat, you have to figure out how do you both make your careers work, right? And so for me, when we talk about, where did you study and why did you study, it was about what made the most sense financially, what was convenient for me for the type of degree that I wanted. And I wanted my MBA. And so I ended up at a university that actually came to the area where I lived, and I was in a cohort. So you'll hear about that is once you kind of start exploring your graduate school options. So I was in a cohort, meaning that it was a certain number of us. We kind of stayed together throughout the entire program. And so that really fit for me because it was convenient. It made sense financially. And it was something, it was a degree that I wanted, and it was and it was at the time that I wanted it. So cohorts and looking at convenience and what makes sense financially for you was something that I really had to take into consideration.
Right. Sylvia over here using the F word on us, finance and financial, but we're going to talk about the F word later.
Yes.
F word later. We're going to go a little bit deeper on that one. All right, panelists, we're going to pivot over to our second question here. And this is, again, another interesting one here. We've got a good cross-section. Some folks that were full-time, some folks that went right after undergrad, some folks that had a minute off and then went back in. Others, again, part-time programs. So I want to unpack this one just a little bit if we can. And so for this question, again, should scholars be considering full-time versus part-time, or what should they be considering? Let's do this one. I want to start with Melissa, and I think I want to call on Dr. H for this. Well, actually, let's go to Carol. Let's go to Dr. Harper on this one as well. So, Melissa, Caroline, talk about full-time, part-time. Talk to her.
Yeah, I think you really kind of have to look at what works. And the great thing about institutions now is they've kind of adapted. Like it used to be that if you wanted to go to graduate school, everybody had to go full-time. You had to make it work. It's a lot different now. People are a little bit more flexible. Sometimes it's virtual full-time. Sometimes it's in-person part-time. So for me, I actually did all the above. I did full-time and part-time. When I was an undergrad, I knew I wanted to go to graduate school, but I did not want to go right away. So I made it a point for me to stand out and be competitive in the application pool because there's only so many pieces of the pie. I chose to work first so that in my application, how I marketed myself was that I had this skill set, I had classroom experience, but I had transitioned those classroom experiences into the workforce. So when I started my master's, I was working full-time still, and I paid for it full-time and graduated, and I did it and I was done with that. But by the time I got to my doctorate, I was one of those cross-section students. So I did not do my PhD in the same disciplines that I did my undergraduate and master's degrees. So again, I was working, but I thought I better just try this out first because this is not like an expanded master's. This is like serious business. Yeah. So I started out part-time just to give myself space to fill it out and see how comfortable I was with my work schedule. And then I became full-time. So I made the decision to go from part-time to full-time later. So I've done all the above. And I will say it was a great path for me that worked.
All right. Let's jump up to Philly or near Philly.
I would say for me, I did both. I did my MBA part-time, and I'm doing my doctorate degree part-time. And that was very strategic for me because I didn't want to pay for it. So I sought out an organization that would pay for my graduate studies for me. So the first part of my career was in the corporate sector, and the company I worked for had tuition reimbursement. So they paid for my MBA. Second part of my career is in higher education. I was just recently at the University of Pennsylvania as a staff member, and they have tuition benefits. And so I started my doctorate degree, which I'm still pursuing at the University of Pennsylvania. They are paying for that. Even though now I transitioned over to another university, Villanova University, they're paying for that as well. So that was very strategic on my part. And so the advice that I would give, to anyone considering this option, first think about it from a personal choice, and then do your research to see what options are available to you. Some degrees are only available on a full-time basis. And if you do plan to do part-time, you need to really think about how are you going to manage working and going to school. And then also, what are the benefits? Are there tuition reimbursement? If you go full-time, you also have to think about financially, are you able to take on a program full-time? And then you want to find out what type of scholarships and fellowships are the universities that you're considering what do they offer you? Can you afford to go to school part-time? So these are the things you need to think about. And it just comes down to a personal choice, doing your research in terms of what options are even available to you. And then when you do make a choice, understand, again, what is the financial commitment and how are you going to pay for it?
Melissa, great information there. Panelists, we'll give you all space. Maybe one, I'll allow one, maybe two add-ons here. This is an important one. Please, anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, Dewey, this is Judd.
Please.
I think what I would add for me, a big part of the decision between full-time and part-time really came down to why was I actually pursuing a PhD in the first place? I had worked for about 10 years and was not in a career path. You know, there's not a ton of jobs out there for a philosophy major in terms of career paths outside of grad school. And I ended up finding a great job, but it just wasn't something that really spoke to who I was. And so I made a decision that I wanted to go to grad school to help shift kind of careers. And in that process, one of the things I realized is that a master's was very different than a PhD. You know, if I had enough experience, if I just got a master's, many of my peers had already completed those. And so it wasn't really necessarily shifting careers because people wanted the master's and the work experience, and I was just adding this late. And so it came down to credentials. And so I was looking between kind of philosophy and theology programs, nonprofits, the community development stuff, and then also public policy. And just through a lot of conversations with many people, one who really kind of said to me simply was my pastor. And he's just like, if you're really stuck between them all, where do credentials matter? And in the public policy space, a credential really does matter. And so for me, that kind of led me to look at those programs. And what I realized in those programs is the competitive ones, the only way to have them pay for your program, for your degree, was to go full time. And so, and the networks that are built, most of the people I talked to who had that type of a PhD, they all talked about their PhD experience and their cohorts and the networks through that. So for me, it was really about what was I trying to get out of? What I got out, what I needed was a credential to give me a career shift. And that ultimately ended up leading me to the full-time.
Team, some great discussion there. I'm seeing lots of head nods and getting some interesting comments here in the chat section too. So they're giving you guys, yeoman's giving you high remarks up to this point. And I want you to let, they're shouting out now their cities. I'm seeing the Windy City. I'm seeing Brooklyn, New York in the house, St. Louis, Missouri, all kinds of folks sending love your way. All right, we got to talk about these exams because contrary to popular belief, you can't just go to the gumball machine and twist it and then the degree fall out. You actually got to do something. So I'm going to ask panelists, talk a little bit about these exams. We see the GRE, the GMAT, the LSAT, MCAT. What are these things? And my goodness, how do you get prepared for them? Sylvia, Judd, I want to give you all kind of A and B on this one for starters. And I know some of our other panelists will want to chime in on this one too. So we may give it a minute on this one. But Sylvia, Judd, you all get us started on this one. Please talk about these exams.
All right. Well, yeah, that's the fun part of it, right? And so
no, it is not. So yes,
they always want the fun part. No, it is not. They always want to test us before they allow us to enter. But I would say, so for me, obviously, I told you I got my MBA, and so I did have to take the GMAT. I tell you, I am not the best standardized test taker, so I really did have to put the time in. Now you can do a lot of things online. At the time I went to the library, I bought, all the books and read what I needed to get prepared. And funny enough, math, I'm strong there, so I really wasn't worried about that. But I did have to study the other parts of it. And so I put the time in, so you do have to do that. But I will say something a little bit different that happened is that a colleague that was trying to do the same thing, she didn't test as well to get in. Now, my scores weren't great, but I got in. But she had to, basically her score in one of the sections was too low. But what she ended up doing was, and this is just kind of, never give up, is she ended up, because of the score that she got, she ended up showing some of the undergraduate courses that she took, the grades that she received in those courses. And what happened as a result of that, and basically she appealed is what she did, but they allowed her to enter the program on provision and
Oh, wow.
really to kind of prove herself. And she did just that. And so my point there is you do have to study. They're never usually any fun unless you're just an amazing standardized test taker. But don't give up. Ask whoever you're turning your scores into that particular institution. If there's an issue, see what type of what you can do differently. Is there an appeal process? Can you come in on probation for a certain amount of time? So that's what I would say. Just don't give up, but you do have to kind of put the work in. So yes.
So I can take my my third grade spelling test in.
Well, I don't
have a
know
smiley
about
face
that.
on it.
No,
Hold
you
on.
cannot.
But Melissa,
No.
it smelled like lemon too. Y'all remember them? The young cats, they don't know that. Used to scratch it. I got an 80. I can take that in?
It's not going to work, Dewey.
No.
I tried. Melissa immediately, she was like, no, that just ain't gonna happen.
Don't try that.
All right, Sylvia, you got to start it here. Dr. Murchie, please jump in. And again, I want to hear from some others on this one too. Talk to us, Dr. Judd.
No problem, Dewey. I think as I shared a little bit in the last one, I worked for 10 years or so before I went back to school, and my school had been philosophy, so there wasn't a lot of math in that process. I was really strong in math when I was younger and through high school, but in college I kind of shifted to more bigger questions and logic and things like that. And I felt so much pressure on myself because I was making this career change, and I realized, like, oh man, this is this moment. If I don't get this right, I'm in trouble. Like, what do I do now? And I guess my advice would be to just make sure you plan, like look at when applications are due, give yourself a lot of time in advance of applying, and prepare as much as you can. I ended up, I didn't do either of those things. And I ended up in the middle of the exam, I essentially had a panic attack. I was like, I can't even go on. I just froze completely. I couldn't, there was a question, it was super easy. I just couldn't find it. And so I ended up just accepting whatever it was. I just left. And, but at that point, there's only a month before all the applications were due. And so there were some rules around when you had to finish an exam. And so, or when you could take a next one after finishing one. And so I just had to rush. And so I ended up taking it, I prepped really hard for that month. I ended up doing just fine. I got into the schools that I was hoping to. But it was one of those things where when I look back on it, if I'd have prepped and planned a lot more, I wouldn't have felt so much pressure in that moment. And that wouldn't have caused my scores to struggle as much. But on the flip side of that, I'll just say, just real quick at the end, I'll say the GRE was critical for getting funding. If I hadn't taken that test, that wouldn't have put me in the group of candidates where they said originally I was going to be a part-time student. And they said, based on your scores, we would love to accept you full-time and cover your tuition. And so that's one of those other reasons where tests are real hard, but if you plan and prepare accordingly, it can actually open doors, not just close them.
Judd, great information. And you said, hey, you'd done a good job, and then they gave you that full financing there. So Chanel, I saw your hand up. Apple, I know you got something on this one too. I want to hear from a couple of other people on this one, even the way that you prepared. Take us back in time. I want to give both of you all space here, please.
Yeah. I wanted to, well, first, I love those responses from Jed and Melissa, and I wanted to echo Judd in terms of opportunities. In addition to financial aid opportunity, scholarship opportunities, and also a higher GRE score gives you the opportunity to negotiate your package once you come in as well, the higher your score. So definitely, yes. The other thing I wanted to add was especially for those who are coming from the workforce like I did and took the GRE after 9 years, take as many practice tests as you can. It's stamina for these tests. It really doesn't test intelligence. I remember the first practice test I took, I thought I'd blow it out of the park. And I got exhausted and like midway through. So just work on your stamina, take as many practice tests as you can. That's what I want to add.
Brian Apple, I want you to talk about that binder you used to have back in the day, man. Talk to him.
Yeah, so I was working at the time, and I think one piece of advice I would say is, depending on what form or what avenue you're going to take to try to prepare, some people are better at self-study, some are better suited. There's courses and training courses that you can actually have a guided training, depending on what best suits your needs. But back when I did it, I set aside 3 months, which was a really long time, but it's a lot of material for the GMAT. You don't really appreciate it till you get that big at least at the time, it was a big binder in the mail that was like, like this. And it did have some CDs in the back, if everybody still remembers what CDs are. But I guess my advice would be, give yourself enough time if you're going to self-study, especially, and if you're working or whatever the situation may be, so you're not putting yourself in a position that you're stressing about the test itself. Whatever you can do to mitigate that. Judd was talking about planning. It's really important to really plan that out when you're trying to organize the time around, where you are now and when you want to start potentially graduate school, and just making sure you have enough time so you don't add any more stress to, what can be a stressful situation in the standardized test.
There you go. There you
Dewey,
go.
can I add a little something there?
Please, put me to jump in. Absolutely.
Thank you. And Judd, I appreciate your transparency. We probably took these tests around the same time. Brian, I remember those CDs. And, back then, test anxiety wasn't a thing. And so I appreciate the realness about what your body goes through. And I hands down agree with Chanel that it's about stamina. But the test for me, and I took both the general and subject GRE, the test for me was not just a test in regards to the school or the program that I might be a good fit for if I had the skills to, compete in that program. But it was also a test for me for myself to make sure that I was truly interested in, especially that subject matter test, truly interested in this subject for the rest of my life. I shared a funny story in our practice here a couple of days ago that I actually took the exam during a tornado. I mean, it couldn't have been worse conditions. But some of the things that I did, in addition to what's been mentioned here in terms of studying, was I also engaged in some what is now called mindfulness techniques. So, when you think about just the space that you're in mentally, you're in your senior year of college, most of us. It's already stressful. So I was able to implement tools that and skills that sort of helped me be in the moment and just do the best that I could. And to your point, Judd, and both Brian, I think once you prepare and you're just honest about, getting yourself to the best position you can be in, some of that anxiety sort of goes to the wayside. Sylvia, I really like the example that you gave of the institution that allowed your classmate to enter provisionally to sort of prove themselves. One of the conversations that we're having here at CGU about our application process is in that holistic application profile. And there are some programs where standardized tests won't be necessary. There may also be programs where resumes and statements of purpose or even letters of recommendation, the way we've thought about that traditionally, those things are changing when we're looking at the whole student. So I think, even if you're not a strong test taker, again, let's implement some healthy skills that can be used not only for test taking, but beyond. Let's also let the test be used to test ourselves about if this is what we're really committed to, which the result of my test was that I was committed to it. I was trying to figure out IO or clinical, so it helped guide that. But, let it also be a tool that helps you, is my point.
Team, we've touched a lot on that. We heard some components there of holistic reviews and things. I know Melissa's got some stuff that she could add from her time. And all she does is Ivies, y'all. Let's get that on the record. I know y'all was just, see, I'm trying to make a laugh. I know, see. But where did it begin, Melissa? Where did it begin?
The first HBCU, Cheney University.
Cheney University. HBCU legend card coming soon, we hope. All right, Melissa, let's stick with you on this one. We're going to do this one a little bit rapid fire. You get to pass the baton or pass the rock over to whoever you want to touch on this one next. We talked about the F word earlier, finance. How did you pay for graduate school? You touched on it a little bit earlier, Melissa. Please continue with that theme, and then you pass the mic, friend. You go.
Again, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't pay for my graduate study. My employer paid for it.
Come on.
But for everyone that doesn't have that option, I really suggest, first of all, if you're doing a PhD program, you never should pay for a PhD program. Most PhD programs are fully funded, and it will give you a stipend if you're a teaching assistant or a research assistant. Also, what we were just talking about, while we really do holistic admissions, and I can attest to that, which means we factor in many attributes, but those standardized test scores, if they are required, can factor into your scholarship package. And so I do, want to stress, do your best, because it can contribute to you getting a full ride or a partial ride. But also the part-time option. If you have, again, an employer that will pay for you to go to graduate school, and that's an option for you where you can work that out in terms of time management, I would stress it. And also seek out external scholarships. You can combine that with what the university offers you and external scholarships you can take with you. But also, lastly, I'll close on pay attention to scholarship deadlines. That's a big thing. So not only just when is the application due, but when do you need to get that application in to be considered for scholarships?
Well, it's a good information there. You get to pick your next victim. I mean, your next contestant. Who do you want to pick on?
I will pass it on to Sylvia.
Well, thank you. And so what I didn't tell you guys is that my former life, I was actually a financial aid director. So that's my background as a financial aid director at both a public and a private institution. So I know a little bit about paying for college, but I will say, how did I pay for it? Remember, I told you I had to make the program fit for me, where I was, where I lived, because I wasn't flexible in where I could move to or just go anywhere. But what I worked for a small company at the time. And so I made the bold move of when I decided that I was going to get my MBA and I got accepted and all of that. I went to my employer, just a small insurance company that I work for, and I said, hey, I'm going back to school. Is there anything that you guys can do to help me out? And they had never done this before, but they didn't pay for everything, but they actually made a big difference. And so they helped me go back to school. And so the point there is always ask, because you never know. Because I did work for a small company, but they were willing to help me out. And now, fast forward today, actually my daughter actually just finished her PhD. Everything was paid for there. What she did was she did the assistantship, the research, and all of that because she could do that, right? And so she went from undergraduate to master's right into her PhD. So all of it was covered. And then finally, I will say, just make sure, regardless, even if it's a scholarship, I know you guys get tired of this, but fill out the FAFSA, because even though it's a scholarship, some scholarships still want to see where you are as far as need. So always fill out that FAFSA, even if you don't want a student loan, because sometimes they still ask for what is your need, even if you're looking for scholarships. And I will pass the mic, and I'll let Dewey choose.
Oh, no, see, you putting it on me. All right, I'm picking Dr. Harper. Dr. Harper, please, enlighten us.
Well, like Sylvia, I had some background going into it at different phases of my academic journey, because I too worked in higher ed. I actually worked at community college first, and then went to public institution and then private HBCU. But in all those spaces, I was an administrator, but I was also a faculty member. So I had some insights as I was kind of planning what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. But even going backwards, we talk about these admissions exams. What most students don't realize is you can get waivers. They're expensive. And that's part of the stress going into it. But here's like, oh my gosh, if I don't do well, I lost my money. Is it going to be worth it? You can get waivers for those. Some institutions that you're going to apply to, some programs, some organizations, not only do they offer preparations for those exams, but they offer waivers to help you pay for that, get in the door. So I did not do that. I was a terrible test taker, but I knew that when I finished my master's, I wanted to walk away with nothing. So I actually worked full time, but I also paid out of pocket as I did my master's, so that I knew that I could walk away and not worry about any debt at all. And that doesn't happen for everybody, because by the time I got to my PhD, I had a choice to make. And it wasn't so much of what discipline or where to go or what institution. It was really about who am I? What do I care about? What kind of research do I want to do? And what do I want to do as a professional? So for me, I was working at a public institution that had free tuition remission. I could have done my doctorate for free, but I had a very good meeting with someone in my network who was a faculty member who said, you will never be able to do the kind of work that you want to do if you go to this institution. They will not invest in you or your research the same way that you care about it. So I actually made the choice to go to an institution that did not offer a package, but that choice was critical to my success. The environment that it provided, the networks that it provided, and all the financial support that came after I got there could not have been matched anywhere. So I couldn't have been as competitive. I didn't make that initial tough decision. So I did both. So I've done loans at the doctoral level, but then I also got funding from external agencies. So I've done all the above, all of which were absolutely necessary for where I was at that point in my journey.
Got you to the finish line, Dr. H, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got you there.
Didn't regret it at all.
All right, pass the baton. We'll try to get everybody else in lightning round type speed. So who you gonna pick on?
Let's see. I think I'm gonna go back to Chanel. No. I changed my mind. I think I'm gonna go back to Brian.
He was just waiting.
So my story was pretty basic. I was, again, working at the time. The company that I worked for, Wells Fargo, offered a credit each year. So I utilized that. I actually stretched out, like, I think it was a part-time program that was supposed to be like a little over 2 years, and I stretched it to a little over three, just to get some extra, get that financial benefit from the corporation. And the rest of it I funded through student loans, which I tried to pay off as quickly as I could, given the situation I was in financially at the time. So,
Brian, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. Who's left? Who has not gone yet? Yeah, like the old game, you had to put your thumb up. All right, hold on. Brian's gonna decide who's gonna pick on next.
It's gonna be Comina.
Thanks, Brian. And
You're
Chanel,
welcome.
you're coming next, so get ready. So I'm a bit of a hybrid here. Everyone had an equal opportunity to help pay for my education. My parents paid for my bachelor's, I paid for my master's, and my current employer is paying for my PhD. Much like Caroline, it was more important for me. So going back to the story where I was an employee for about 4 years before I entered the PhD program, that was intentional. I knew I was going to pursue my PhD. I was exploring institutions. I knew I could get full funding. But when I looked at the mission of the institution, who I wanted to study with, that core faculty, how often they had been cited, the type of research, and a lot of what Caroline said about being supported in the type of research I wanted to do, that was more important. And that came from CGU. So my employer, through tuition remission, pays for my PhD. And in addition, prior to coming to CGU, I was at another institution for 10 years and was able to pay for my son's education through the tuition exchange program. So part of this is, if you're working for an organization that will pay for your tuition, but also perhaps if you are a dependent or your parents or someone who, can sort of claim you is working for an organization that has dependent tuition benefits.
Right.
And I will pass it again to Chanel.
Great. Well, like everyone else said, I was in a doctorate program and it's fully covered. So there wasn't much to say there. Once you're in one of those programs, you're accepted, you're fully funded with a stipend. For my master's program, immediately after undergrad, I was a perfect example of what Sylvia said not to do. I applied late and missed the scholarship deadline. So I took out a loan for that first year of my master's program. But as soon as I got in there, I started asking around about scholarships and when deadlines were, and then the second year was covered. So just to say, even if you don't get funding your first year, there's opportunities once you arrive and once you're on campus to get funding afterward. And
Try again. Try again.
And don't be afraid to ask for more. If you receive a scholarship package and you're a competitive student, make sure you go back and ask for more money. And in most cases, you will get it.
All right, you got to play that one out. Chanel, you be the student. You ask Melissa, or y'all decide. Play this one out. You got 90 seconds. Who's going to be the student?
I'll
You
be a
want me to
student.
ask? You
I
ask.
already know if Chanel is coming to Villanova, I'm giving her a full package.
All right. All right.
That's based on merit. So there's
She
two
got,
ways
she
to
got,
assess
she got a bunch of stuff after her name now. But seriously, give us a script, Melissa, on how to do
So-
that. Real talk.
So it's we assess scholarship based on merit and need.
Sure.
And the need comes out of filling out that FAFSA form, that free
Yeah.
application for federal
Yeah.
student aid,
Yep.
right? So that's need, and that's based on income. For merit, it's based on the merit of your application. So if you're coming in with some work experience, if it's a PhD program and you have some research, you have some publishable papers, there's fit with the faculty, all of those things factor into merit. And so the more competitive your application, if you get higher test scores, even though it's holistic admissions, all of those things factor in to the amount of the scholarship a university will award to you. So those students that have the highest merit based on how competitive their application is, they're going to get the top award. And like I said, if they don't give you the top award, and if you're sort of teetering between two institutions, and if it's their competitor institution, they're going to what they call top it up. And they're going to give you the best scholarship at that point because they really want you. Once we admit you, we really want you to come.
Love it. Love it.
You know, Dewey,
Bring us home on this one, man.
yeah, there's just a couple quick little things that I learned in the process and after that I just wanted to share. One is I started the program with a one and when I started my master's, my daughter is 4 months old, and then the PhD, I had a 1 and a 2-year-old. So it was a little bit of an experience to go from having a job for 10 years to now I'm a student. And I mean, they did just like others. I chose schools that covered the tuition. We did take out loans because we had to figure out how do we pay for things like childcare, you know, because if my wife was working and I had to figure out how do we do this. We had a little stipend, but it wasn't enough. And I think what really contributed in my process was because I had kids at that point and just I was at a different stage of life than many of my peers in grad school, it was really important to find a school that knew how to get PhD students through. A lot of schools don't do that. There were a lot of schools that, you know, were known for 10-year programs where people are in the program forever and they're just being used as teachers. And even within schools, it's by department. My program was in a very large social sciences program, and the policy, like they pushed people through, they funded you for all 5 years and you were, you know, three to 5 years, depending on, but then other departments that we would often be in the same research centers with, you know, it was very often you'd bring in a whole group of econ students or some other field to teach undergrad and master's classes for 2 years. And then if they didn't pass their qualifiers, they got bumped out. So I think it's really important to think about some of those things and understand the programs you're going to. And then on the back end, like with loans, you know, for those of us, like for me, I have loans from each year. I end up doing just with the federal loans, whatever they would allow available to me. But then I got out and I found that the federal rates were, the interest rates were 7-8%, which was almost double what some of the private sector loans or the private loans were at the time. I was able, so I refinanced to the private, but then I lost all the benefits if there were any structure shifts for federal loan forgiveness. And so I think those are things to make sure you're thinking about on the front end of when you're taking out loans. What kind of loans are they? What am I prepared to do? If I'm going into civil service or social services or nonprofits, a lot of times there's forgiveness of loans. If you go work at Wells Fargo, you're not going to get that forgiveness. And so I think of those different types of things to think about, because for me, my calculus was just very different, having the family and at the stage of life I was, that I just really needed to make sure that we were as thoughtful as possible, so that it didn't actually kind of just wreck everything. And to be clear too, there was no choice. I had to finish this PhD. Like if I didn't, my family would have probably killed me.
With kindness, of course.
With kindness.
With kindness, of course. Team, I really want to commend you all for the responses. And I'm also seeing a lot of really good comments come into the chat. So scholars, thanks for helping one another. I love what I'm seeing here with the suggestions around, hey, get the review packets, things along those lines. And we're going to touch on some of these other questions that have come in. We've got one final kind of structured question that we're going to touch on, and then we're going to jump into Q&A and deliver that rapid fire. This is always a fun one for us, right? You're working hard in the classroom. You're doing the things you need to do there. You're putting in the study time, study groups, whatever. But there has to be some other things that go on. You know, I do want you all to talk about some of the networks that you engaged with, some of the things maybe that you did for fun, and also one of our favorites. What is something you wish you had done, or someone you wish you'd gotten closer to, and not the opposite sex, but someone you wish you had gotten closer to while you're on campus relative to this one. So, Sylvia, let's stay with you on this one. Apple, I feel like I got to hear from you. Chanel, maybe a word or two from you on this one as well. But please unpack that one around this networking piece for us, and anything you missed or anything you got.
Okay, so for me, I was very, as an undergraduate student, I was very much involved in student government and knew the administrators very well. I kept those networks really close and tight, even though once I graduated, I left that university, my undergraduate degree, but they basically kind of guided me in the right direction. And like I said, I was limited as to where I could go, just given my situation. And so I stayed well connected. And you heard me in the beginning say that I'm on my foundation board. But what also happened is after I got my MBA, I ended up going back to my alma mater and working for the university. So always keep your networks close. And as far as fun, one of the things that I would say is that I really love the cohort that I was in. I mean, we kept each other motivated. We did fun stuff on the weekends. We studied together. So just make the fun benefit you in the sense that, you know, we made sure we had fun, but we also got things done. And we even motivated each other like, hey, it's time to go to class. Let's go. So love the cohort and wouldn't change anything. And I will pass it to Melissa.
Sure. One thing I can say, maybe it's a drawback from going part-time while working, is that I didn't get an opportunity in a graduate level to really engage as you would if you were a full-time student. And that's just the reality. You know, I worked full-time during the day and I mostly took classes in the evening. And then I came back home to my life. So that is something that you may want to consider as a drawback if you're working full-time and going to a program part-time. Because there are, that really is key, is building those networks. And I would say at a graduate level for me, at least for the MBA part, my MBA degree, I didn't make those networks. I didn't make those connections because life was happening at the same time. Not so much now because I have a professional network and it's highly encouraged. When I was working at the University of Pennsylvania to pursue a graduate degree, they're very supportive of that. And so I then created a network within my colleagues at the University of Pennsylvania, a supporting network, professional network. And so I saw the difference between my current experience and when I did my MBA, working full-time. I think the advantage now is that even though I'm working full-time, I was working at the institution where I was pursuing my doctorate degree. So again, it's about choices.
All right. Chanel, Brian, I want you guys to jump on this one too, to close us out on this one, please.
Yeah, I'll just add that for PhDs, those interested in pursuing PhDs, those departments can be really insular and feel really small. So my only suggestion is to, and you know, when they become small and when they feel small, they make challenges feel bigger. So to expand your world, kind of like what Melissa was saying, you know, it can be a negative to work part-time and be in school, but it can also be a positive because that makes your world bigger. If you're not working part-time and you're a full-time student, try and do things outside of your department, engage with campus life, do things in the community. Just don't make that department and that program your life.
Right.
Brian?
Okay.
I'd also echo Melissa's comments about the potential drawbacks if you're doing it part-time and working full-time. It does make it difficult to establish networks. One of the things that drew me to South Carolina's program, or their MBA program, was like it wasn't just a bunch of finance majors all in the program. There was a lot of different industries that were represented by the people in the program. So I felt like I did a good job while I was there to, start establishing those networks and broadening, my industry knowledge and kind of getting more background in some of those areas and what may or may not interest me going forward. So I think that's very important. Do whatever you can to, build those networks while you're there. One thing I did not do and wish I did was maintain those networks after we got out of the program and did a better
Yes.
job with that. There is something to be said, and this applies to, it applies to friendships, it applies to professional networks, it applies to everything. And that, find the people that, that you are drawn to or stay connected to, and take the effort and the time to maintain those, because those networks, you really don't know when down the line, those might be beneficial to you, and vice versa for the other people and the thing that you bring to the table. So one thing I wish I did was, again, maintain those networks better as I moved outside of the program and graduated from it.
Panelists, I salute you. Some really, really great information. I'm going to encourage, again, all of our scholars to go ahead and connect in with our partners on LinkedIn. Everybody look at the camera for a minute. Everybody give them a big smile. If I give a big, we're going to hold it for 3 seconds. All right, scholars, take your screen grab right now. All these people that you smiling. And I encourage everyone that's on to jump on LinkedIn and say, hey, at Brian Apple said this, at Dr. H said this, at Sylvia Jones said this. Put it out there. Let's share this information with others to kind of pay it forward. All right, team, we're going to pivot into Q&A, and Angel, is on us because we live it over, but that's all right. That's okay. So we're going to pivot into Q&A. Lightning round. One response with one additional person to come in if they choose on these. Several questions, team, that have come in around the payment process. As an example, where is the best place to look for private scholarships? Is there a good website to start your search? I'm calling on Sylvia Jones for this one, for starters.
Well, thank you. So a plug here is, as you will receive information about our wellsfargo.com/scholarships. That's a link that you should receive. When you go there, there is a full, it's our scholarship center. And within that scholarship center, you'll see several links where you can link out and apply, but also you'll see one called tuitionfundingsources.com. Click on that link, you can build your profile. Based on your self-reported information, it will give you a list of scholarships that you're eligible to apply for, and you just click out and apply. Continue to, as your GPA, if it increases, update that on your profile so you can be eligible for even more. And as you get closer to like the different academic years, more scholarships will become available.
All right, Sylvia, great points there. And when in doubt, Powerball, Mega Millions. You see, listen, y'all think I'm advocating? I'm not advocating. I'm making a joke for the recording purposes. That is an attempt at humor. So let's we'll stick with that there. All right, Sylvia and team, another one here. What would you say is a good, or I'm going to use the word reasonable amount of debt someone should consider taking on when enrolling in a master's program? I'm seeing head nods from Dr. Harper. You want to start on this one, Doc?
So for me, it was one of those, I had to be realistic. I mean, honestly, and I tell people all the time, like, consider what's happening in your life. So if you are, as Judd talked about, you've got children to care for, or you've got aging parents, you've got relatives, consider all those things. But for me, I knew based on my tuition when I was doing my master's, I knew how much the tuition was. I knew how much I made. So I knew that it wasn't necessary for me to actually get any debt. So that's why I was like, just budget. Like, this is real life. These things happen. Make some tough choices. You got a budget, but you pay out of pocket. But I knew that wasn't realistic though for a PhD. So I always say, what's reasonable to one isn't reasonable to other, because it depends on your income. It also depends on where you're trying to go. When you graduate, what discipline are you going to go to, and what's your income going to be?
Yep.
You got to think about those kind of things. So, we talk about debt, people forget there are medical professionals who leave with about $200,000 of debt. but they also know they're going to make at least 150,000 when they walk out the door. So consider, what kind of jobs are you going to get? What kind of skill level do you have that will help you get in the door to pay for that? And also, is it going to be worth the effort? Because I see students over the years get degrees and sometimes they don't finish, but you still have to pay for it. And then they're working in a totally different industry that doesn't allow them the income to pay back that debt. So they then find themselves in that very tough circle. So I would say, think about all of those things and be really honest about yourself, about what resources do you have, what extra help can you get financially, and think about how that's going to work for you realistically.
All right, we're doing a great job on these, team. We're going to keep the lightning round Q&A. Team, balancing through on this one. How do you balance the family life? How do you balance the graduate school? Somebody unpack it, please. How do you do it?
I'm happy to share a little about the family life. I think a big one was really treating it kind of like a job. I came in, I was a decade older than, all the students. I had I hadn't done math. I wasn't a coder. A lot of the students were coming straight out of undergrad. They knew how to code. I had to catch up on that. But one of the things I had experience is knowing how to go to work and do a job from 9 to 5. And so there were a lot of days I'd take the kids to daycare and I would go straight into the office and I would work, often be there by 8 and go all the way through until 5, pick them up. But a lot of my peers wouldn't show up until, noon, 1 o'clock, but they would go later. And a lot of times they treated it more as socially, like they were in different stages of life. They took long lunches. They built great networks, and explored a variety of things. So for me, a big part of like how to manage it all is kind of know what you're going into. I still benefit. I still would say that my network there, like my friends from grad school, the cohort are some of the closest friends I have. But just depending on where you are in life, you may have to adjust how you treat grad school. Is it more of a job? Is it more of a social thing? But at the end of the day, there's also the great equalizers of exams at the end of each year. And if you don't pass those exams, you're in trouble. So you got to make sure you do the focus on the work.
Judd, thanks for that one. Anyone else want to chime in on that one? An important one here. It's come up a couple of times. It looks like in the Q&A.
I would say I came into my PhD program with a 5-month-old. I was married and had a 5-month-old. So my husband was very supportive, but I will say that I looked for a program that was supportive of families. That's the first thing. And so if you are in a program like that, then I recommend coming in as your full self, coming in and being honest, talking to administrators about it and about what your needs are. You'd be surprised at the amount of supports that are on campus and around, in addition to the supports you have at home.
Okay.
Dewey, can I add a
see you
little
off
bit?
mute as well. Please jump in.
Thank you. So I'm going to one up Judd and Chanel here. Just bear with me. I started my master's program with a 4-day-year-old, or however you say that. He was born 4 days before my master's program, and I went straight through. Chanel's point is excellent. I think you have to shop for the environment that's going to support where you are in life. And so, we're in an interesting space. We're not relegated to only in-person options. My institution has maintained hybrid options. I think there's also, something to be said about, and my master's program was like this, as is my PhD program. They're graduate only. Actually, my PhD program more so is graduate only. And so we actually think about our students as not just part and full-time, but members of families, both as caretakers, as parents. And so a lot of our co-curricular and student life activities are with this in mind. And we really try to meet our students where they are. But again, 4 days after having my son, and he went straight through with me. That took a village, to say the least. And it's also the reason why I needed a 20+ year break before going back. But
did they let him walk across the stage with you at the end too?
He did. I barely made it. It was my option to stay home and rest. My parents talked me into going, and he still remembers that day. So it was worth it.
Do me a favor, give me 30 more seconds. We have a question specifically about the online components there. We kind of talked about a little bit of it. Give us 30 more seconds on why online may be okay for some people. 30 seconds though.
I would also just really, anything you do, you have to do your research, because when you're talking about online, there's 2 words. It's synchronous and asynchronous. Asynchronous means it's kind of at your own pace. And that might sound really attractive, because you don't have to log on at a very specific time when the class is being held from 7 to 10 p.m. But you have to be disciplined. You still have to do the work. And sometimes that can be difficult. If you're a very structured person, that type of online program doesn't have structure. And so you have to create your own structure. And if something is synchronous, most programs, I think it's a mix, but most are moving more towards this asynchronous where it's kind of at your own pace. So that's one thing to consider. And how do you learn? Do you thrive better in a classroom with, classmates participating? Online can be very isolating and lonely. So you really have to think about your learning style and how is the online course being delivered. Maybe there's a hybrid option where it's a mix of both, where you have some online content, but then they call it on campus sort of intensive, where you have to go to the campus. So it's really about doing your research. It's the same type of research if you're, looking at a, on campus, fully immersive program. Online programs, you have to do your research because it's also how committed are the faculty? Are they still offering virtual office hours? So the same type of support services that you would get in an on-campus degree setting, you should also expect that online. And you have to really research the institution on how they're delivering that.
All right, team, we love it. We're going to get two more, and then we're going to get a closing thought from you all entitled, Would You Do It Again? So just keep that in mind here. One of the scholars says, hey, listen, didn't have the strongest GPA coming up, real talk. Can I make up for it in those placement exams?
Dewey, I didn't have a great GPA in undergrad, but in the PhD program, I was part of the admissions committee a number of years. And in that process, I learned about my application and what they thought of me. And at first, and I didn't have a great GPA, but a big part of it was they didn't recognize the school. And so the GRE helped having a strong score there, but then also having a master's degree where I was able to offset some of the GPA was what allowed them to let me in. So I think it varies by school, but I think one thing to consider is it also depends on what school you were attending when you got that lower GPA.
Sure, fair enough.
If I could add to that,
yes, ma'am.
I think it's also, I think it also shows determination. Take a course at a community college to make up for that course that you didn't do well in. Because when you apply to, especially a graduate program, they're going to want all of your transcripts. So if you didn't do so well in an undergraduate level and, a math course or something like that, take it at a community college, take it online, submit that transcript. And then also most admissions will allow you to submit a supplemental statement. This is outside the required essays and personal statements, but submit a supplemental statement to explain why there might have been a hiccup. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe you had to work to support your family. Whatever the case may be, to kind of explain what happened if you had a particularly bad semester. This all goes into holistic admissions. We really do take all of that into consideration, and it really shows your commitment to, bettering your academic profile when you take those courses. So yeah, some institutions get caught up in where you took it, but at the end of the day, it is about grit, it's about determination and your trajectory moving forward. So that's a positive.
Well, listen, good information there. I'm going to stick with you for 90 seconds, and then we got to jump to the close here. You've worn that hat that's been focused around, or a hat, better yet, that's been focused around the healthcare industry, and now you're in the law industry. This question is specifically for you, but I'll give space for others to jump in. Are you finding most of your students that were going through the rigorous nursing program at UPenn, were they coming directly after undergrad, or did they have a couple of years of work experience and then flip the coin over and say the same path that you see for law school students today?
Yeah, I would say, so I was doing admissions for the nursing program at the University of Pennsylvania. And at the graduate level for nursing, experience was really key. One, because with nursing, you have to kind of know what specialty area you want to go to. At a graduate level in nursing, you're specializing in pediatrics or adults or something like that. So you nurse anesthesiology. So you really do need to gain that experience, one, to really know which discipline you want to go in. So that was very different. With law, I'm seeing that it's a mixed bag. We
Okay.
do see folks with a few years experience, but we also see students coming in from right from undergrad, because what you're gaining in law school, they really have to teach you, which is why it doesn't matter for an undergraduate degree. You can pursue any type of bachelor's degree to pursue law. And so it really depends on the discipline, but
Sure.
I would still err on the side is try to get as much work experience you can, even if it's through an internship, because having that experience, that real world experience, will help you better when you get to a graduate curriculum.
All right. So the Sandman is coming to remind us that the sand has almost run out of the hourglass, and so we're going to bring up that final question. Angel, thank you. Let's just bring that final question up, and this was a simple one that I'll ask each of you all to integrate in as a closing thought. And Brian, we'll start with you on this one if we can, and we'll just let you pass it down the line accordingly. Would you do it again? And is there anything that you would do differently? Please touch on this one, and then just continue to pass it on down the line, Brian.
Would I do it again? Absolutely. Even though I was outside, undergrad for 10 years, I was in the workforce doing the grad school while I was working. I was able to actually apply the things I was learning as I was working. It was a great experience. I met a lot of great people, and it helped me further my career. So yes, I would definitely do it again. Transition over to Kwamina.
Thanks, Brian. I would hands down do it again, and I would select the small institutions that I selected. I would have chosen the same field of study, psychology, counseling, and now higher education and student affairs. I would probably have pursued my master's full-time if I wasn't a working mother, to reduce that debt load. And I have talked to several people, and anecdotally, I do think those of us who had to seek funding or pay for our education would say that we would do it again, at least those who have completed. I know for me, not only has it positioned me to create the trajectory in my career that I have, but it's also positioned me to be a business owner. And so, I'm able to run a clinical practice on the side while I also work full-time in higher education administration. So it was really those transferable skills and being able to pivot, whatever that meant in terms of the field of study, the university, but absolutely would do it again.
Right.
And sorry.
No, you got it. You in charge. I just work here.
I'll hand it over to Judd.
Thanks, Kwamina. And I would say with 100% certainty, yes. Like I loved what I studied. I still love research. I think it's so powerful. And I love to be in the role I sit, where I bridge academic research to people that are actually doing work. And so it's really kind of a nice, I've loved it. And as far as what I would do differently, I really don't think I would do anything. My journey was one that it took a long time to get to where I was when I made the decision to go back to school. And no matter what happens, whatever journey you take, you're going to end up having surprises. I did not expect that 3 weeks in we'd find out we were having another kid. But like those things happen, they surprise you, but you're going to have to adapt. And I think every student I knew had something that came up. And so I don't think I'd do anything different. Like once you make the decision that this is what you want to do, go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Judd Murchie. Pass it along, good sir. Pass it along. You pick.
I'll pass it to Chanel.
Thanks. And I would 100% do it again. I think all the goals I had coming in to grow as a researcher, a professional, to grow my networks, I feel that I've accomplished all of those things. It was a long and tough road, but I've accomplished those things. And I do feel that my career options expanded in a way where I have the freedom to do work that I'm more interested in. So I'm really thrilled with that. And I don't think I would change anything. Passing that on to Sylvia.
So I echo everyone else. Of course, I would not change a thing. I would definitely go the same path that I took because it was convenient and it worked for me, and financially it fit. The tip that I will offer is, earlier we talked about, paying for school. And so we recommend that as an undergraduate student, You do not take out more student loans than what you would earn that first year out of undergrad. And so if you've already reached that point or you've exceeded that point, please work for a while or try to get scholarships to get that graduate degree, because you really don't want to burden yourself with additional debt.
Sylvia,
and I
say
will
it
pass
again.
it along to Melissa.
Say that one again. No. You're not getting off that easy. Say that
Absolutely.
one again.
So what we recommend is, as an undergraduate student, is that you do not borrow any more than what you will earn your first year out of college based on your degree. And you can go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics to see what potentially you will earn with that degree. And so keep your borrowing no higher than that. And definitely if you already exceeded that limit, you want to make sure that as a graduate student, look for scholarships or pay down some of that debt, because debt is real and it can be a real burden on you financially as you go through life.
Honorary doctorate to Sylvia Jones from the Norwood School of Hard Knocks. Honorary doctorate. See what that gets you.
Right.
Yeah, I echo what everybody else is saying. Yeah, I would definitely do it again. And, it put me in the position where I am today. It was very strategic going into it, where I knew I wasn't going to pay for it and got others to pay for it. And sort of what someone else was saying earlier, it also put me in a position where I got them to also pay for my daughter's education. So now she's leaving college debt free. So no, I would not do anything any differently. The only thing I can say right now is just doing what we're doing and passing all this advice forward.
Yes. Because
I can say it's not something, I didn't have the opportunity to attend a panel like this and get this incredible advice. So, as far as anything I would do differently now is just, now that I know, just continue to pay it forward and advise students on all of these things.
Any university.
The first.
Hey, she's got more stories about Cheney. Y'all gonna have to inbox her though, because she didn't share one of them stories that she normally shares, but you have to inbox her to find out about that one. All right, who do we miss? Who's still left? I think we got one or two more. Dr. Harper?
I think, yeah, it's
All
me.
right.
So would I do it all again? Absolutely. The exact same way, because it was great. And what would I do differently? Nothing, because I will say that the one thing that I did, and I was intentional about it, was number one, making sure that I charted the path, that I thought through all the other options of, if this doesn't work, I can do this. If this doesn't happen, I can go there. If I don't get in here, I can do that. I had already laid out my options. And I think part of it is also not even just mindset, but every opportunity, every time I had to do an exam, every time I had to do an application, it was an opportunity for me to tell people who I am sincerely. And so people knew whenever they interacted with me, they knew what they were going to get. They knew what drove me. They knew what research I cared about, and they knew that what I wanted to do with my career. So everything else spun out of that. It was the relationships I formed, the work that I did, the faculty members who I still am in touch with. It drove everything. So yeah, I would do that. No, I'm actually a Sagittarius. We're super fun. FYI. So yeah, everything
the chat is off the hook. The chat is off the hook today. That's all.
There you go. We're always learners, though. We're always looking for opportunities to learn and grow, and that really is who I am. And so, would I do it all differently? No, because I really wanted to be present and enjoy the opportunity. It's stressful. It's a lot of work, but it's also really exciting and it's fun. So for me, yeah, I would do it all the same way.
Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished panel, let's give it up for them wherever you guys are. You can clap it up, you can snap it up. But listen, that photo that you took earlier, we'll give you one more chance. All right, panelists, one more time at the camera for 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and snap those pictures. All right, if you heard something on this webinar, please @mention the partner or @mention the entire group and put it out there. Let's continue to hashtag pay it forward with things. So panelists, amazing job. We've heard from each of you. Here's this resources page that we touched on earlier. Some really important items on here for you to consider. And when we share our playback for this, we may add a couple of additional items in to consider, but go ahead and get a screen grab of this one. And again, when we send the playback, we'll also include maybe a couple of additional items that will be really helpful for consideration with things. Panelists, again, we're seeing lots of love in the chat. Thank you so much. Great advice. All kinds of nice pieces there. some reminders on how to stay connected to your network. You start with the folks that are here, team. Start with the folks that you've met today. Utilize those folks as your network. Call in those professors. Remember those friends that you met in other areas, and find ways to connect in with them. So I think that's the best way to kind of continue to keep your networks running strong. Again, resources to share, you've got those here. Final reminders as we get you out of here in the next 5 minutes maximum. Don't forget, we have our survey. Special thanks to Angel Heyman. She does an amazing job behind the scenes. One day I'm gonna get on camera. One day I'm gonna be the presenter. I'm gonna bring her on, which she can't tell I'm bringing her on. But she does an amazing job. This is her handiwork here with the survey. Please take a moment, scan that, give us feedback. We're always looking for ways to refine and kind of tweak and adjust. So please hit that survey link for us and give us your feedback. Those things come in confidentially. If you need to circle back with a question or something, you always know how to contact us. Beyond college, my goodness, team, we're back in class. my son is back on campus. You all are back on campus. We're running out of year here quickly. If you scan the QR code there at the top, it's going to take you to the full series. Stand by. Our playbacks are coming very, very soon. You're going to be able to access those. Special thanks to our friends at the Jackie Robinson Foundation for making those available. We also hope to add those to the Wells Fargo YouTube channel as well. So stand by for those. That top link will take you there. And then we got 3-piece snack left. Social Media Smarts coming up for us in September. Unboxing credit and credit matters that matter. Great subject matter that will be bringing some banking partners in to share highlights and suggestions there. And then we'll wind up the year in November with building a strong leadership brand. Again, same rules there, QR codes, scan them, grab that screen grab, send that, pass that information along to everyone on campus to tell them to come and join us. Some other final reminders here, resources again to stay connected on the next slide. We've got a link here to our talent committee. We've actually changed this page a little bit. If you scan this QR code now, it's going to take you over to our Human Resources BMarie website. That will actually allow you to upload your information and submit a resume for consideration. And so please go ahead and upload the information there and do us a favor. When you submit that, send us over an email. Hey, Dewey, hey, Angel team, Dr. Harper, just want to let you know, I just submitted my resume and I'm especially interested in internships for 2024 or full-time roles after graduation in these particular areas. Contact us, and then let's make sure that you know about all of those opportunities. You can also join the talent community and utilize the keyword search there to be able to learn more. And the last but not least, students will ask us a lot of times, and Angel, if we'll go back just for one moment, students will ask us a lot of times, I've got a financial question. I've got a burning thing that's important for me financially. Who can I go to? The great thing is, team, we have our Wells Fargo bankers available. You can actually click on the QR code here. It'll actually take you out to the website where you can set up an appointment. If you're an existing customer, you can log in and then set up an appointment with the banker, or you can find a banker that is near you. I want you all to come and ask these folks the hard questions, the things that you're not even comfortable asking anyone else. Come. And if you benefited from today, know that you can ask our Wells Fargo team of experts, and we'll be able to offer you solutions and provide you with resources to help you along your financial journey across any area. So please utilize that link and give us testimonials after the fact. Hey, I was able to set an appointment up and I met with a banker in California or in Texas or in New York or in Seattle, and they were really able to help me. Please give us feedback relative to using that as well. Angel, thanks for going back to that slide. As we wind things up, team, my closing thoughts will be to thank our amazing panelists, Brian, Pamina, Chanel, Caroline, Sylvia, Melissa, Judge. Thank you all so much for the information that you shared. I hope your inboxes are getting filled with requests from our amazing scholars that are joining and to the folks that are listening to the playback. I also want to acknowledge John Tucker working in the background. John, thank you for your great leadership and all the work that you're doing there at Claremont Graduate University, and for introducing us to Pamina to be a part of this amazing work. We're appreciative of you, sir. Mentioned earlier, Angel Heyman as well, just does a masterful job on all of these pieces. I'm also going to shout out our legal team. Our legal team actually goes in every one of these webinars and reviews our content and gives us a thumbs up. So David, Paul, Fadi, thank you all so much for the work that you all do to help us kind of get these in a way that we know that's going to be the information is going to be beneficial for those that are tuning in. I want to thank you all. Please, let's get focused. Let's strap on the seat belts. Let's get ready for this 2023-2024 academic year. It's time to bring it. It's time to do the things we need to do academically. It's time to make those social connections that you need to. It's time to build those networks. And let's continue to have an amazing, amazing rest of our summer as we get back to campus. And join us again, September the 21st, Social Media Smarts and Cybersecurity. Another one of my favorite sessions that we do every year. Let's get you social media savvy, so you'll be able to be social media safe. Join us on the 21st of September for that one. Everyone have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, a wonderful weekend, and we will see you all next time for our next discussion. Good night, everybody. Take care.